What's the ultimate betrayal? A husband secretly removes his wife from the guest list of a major gala, the most important night of his career, and replaces her with his mistress. He wanted her to be invisible, a boring hobbyist wife he'd left behind. He told everyone she was unwell. He thought he'd won. But what happens when the unwell wife you just erased shows up as the event's main sponsor? Before we start the story, tell us in the comments what city are you watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The air in the Drake residence was like that in a museum. Beautiful, temperature-controlled, and utterly devoid of life. It clung to the oversized abstract paintings and the sterile white marble floors of their penthouse overlooking the city. For Harper Vaughn, the silence was the loudest thing in her life. It was a constant humming reminder of the chasm that had opened between her and her husband, Gabriel Drake. They were, by all accounts, a power couple. Gabriel was a senior partner at the prestigious law firm Sterling, Draper & Pierce, a man whose ambition was as sharp and tailored as his expensive suits. Harper, to the outside world, was the elegant, unassuming wife, the perfect hostess, the quiet supporter. It was a role she had once played with love, but now wore like a lead cloak. The change had been gradual, a slow erosion over the past few years. Gabriel's successes had inflated his ego until it filled every room, leaving no space for her. He had started to see her not as a partner, but as an accessory, a beautiful, well-bred ornament to be displayed at galas and dinner parties. He had forgotten the woman he married, the sharp-minded software architect with a fire in her eyes. He had quite deliberately stopped asking about her work. "It's just some computer nerd stuff, isn't it?" he'd once said with a dismissive wave of his hand when a friend inquired. "Keeps her busy?" Harper hadn't corrected him. She had let him believe it, let him think her company, Vaughn Innovations, was a little hobby, a passion project she tinkered with from her home office. She never told him when she secured her third round of funding, when her user base crossed 10 million, or when Microsoft had tried to buy her out for a figure that would have made his annual salary look like a rounding error. Her silence was her sanctuary, the one part of her life he hadn't yet managed to tarnish with his condescension. The beginning of the end came on a crisp Tuesday afternoon. Harper was in her office, a sleek, minimalist space that contrasted sharply with the rest of the penthouse, deep in a conference call with her development team in Zurich. They were finalizing the rollout of Athena, a revolutionary data encryption software that was already making waves in the tech industry. "The preliminary reports from the beta testers are flawless," said her lead engineer, Lucas Mercer, his voice buzzing with excitement through the speaker. "The security protocols are holding. We've thrown everything we have at it, and it's a fortress." A rare, genuine smile touched Harper's lips. "Excellent work, Lucas. Let's stick to the schedule. I want to be ready for the Q4 launch." She ended the call with a feeling of pride and accomplishment, a warm current in her veins. This was hers. She had built this from the ground up, fueled by late nights, relentless determination, and an unshakable belief in her vision. The door to her office slid open without a knock. Gabriel stood there holding a thick, cream-colored envelope. He didn't acknowledge her call or the schematics on her screen. His focus was solely on the invitation in his hand. "It's here," he announced, his voice booming with self-importance. "The invitation to the Starlight Foundation Gala." Harper swiveled in her chair. The Starlight Foundation was the city's most prominent children's charity, and its annual gala was the absolute pinnacle of the social calendar. It was a night of immense networking, where fortunes were donated and careers were made. For Gabriel, whose firm represented the foundation, it was the most important night of the year. "That's wonderful, dear," she said, her voice even. He strode into the room, placing the envelope on her desk but keeping his hand firmly on it. This year is different. I'm on the host committee. Victoria Hale herself told me my speech this year is crucial for locking in the Henderson account. He was practically vibrating with nervous energy and ambition. Everything has to be perfect. Harper looked at the invitation. Mr. Gabriel Drake and guest, it read, not Mr. and Mrs. Gabriel Drake. A small detail, perhaps a simple oversight by the event planners, but in the context of their marriage, it felt like a paper cut, small but sharp and stinging. And guest? She asked, raising a delicate eyebrow. Gabriel had the decency to look momentarily flustered. It's a standard format they use, darling. Don't be pedantic. Obviously, you're my guest. He said the word guest, as if he were bestowing a great honor upon her, as if she were a stranger he was magnanimously agreeing to escort. He didn't see the flicker of hurt in her eyes. Or if he did, he chose to ignore it. He was too busy looking at his own reflection in the darkened glass of her monitor. I'll need you to wear the sapphire dress, he continued, already planning the evening as if it were a military campaign. The one we bought in Milan. And please, let's have your hair done professionally. No tight bun. Something soft, approachable. Approachable, Harper repeated, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. Yes. And darling, he added, his tone shifting to one of strained patience. When we're there, perhaps you could mingle less, or at least stick to the other wives. Last year you got into that dreadfully boring conversation about, what was it, algorithmic ethics, with that tech billionaire. It was terribly off-putting. People don't want to talk about business at these things. The man he was referring to, a titan of Silicon Valley, had sought her out after hearing whispers of her work. The conversation had led to a lucrative consulting contract for Vaughn Innovations. But Gabriel saw none of that. He only saw his wife failing to perform her designated role as a silent, smiling prop. I understand, she said, her voice a placid lake over a raging current. I will do my best not to be off-putting. Satisfied, Gabriel finally released the invitation and turned to leave. Good. This is my night, Harper. Our future at the firm. My path to a named partnership. It's all riding on this. I can't afford any distractions. As the door slid shut, Harper stared at the invitation. Mr. Gabriel Drake and guest. A guest in her own life, an accessory to his. The warmth from her successful call with Lucas had vanished, replaced by a familiar, chilling cold. She looked at the reflection in the monitor, past Gabriel's fleeting image, and saw herself. She saw the exhaustion in her eyes, but underneath it, a flicker of the fire he thought he had extinguished. He had called the evening his night. He had said he couldn't afford distractions. He had no idea, she thought, a grim sense of resolve beginning to form, just how big of a distraction she could be. The gilded cage had become a prison, and she was finally ready to find the key. She just didn't realize that Gabriel was about to hand it to her himself. Gabriel Drake felt a surge of triumphant power as he walked down the hallowed halls of Sterling, Draper, and Pierce. The rich mahogany walls, adorned with portraits of stern-faced founders, seemed to approve of him. He was a man on the ascent, and the Starlight Gala was to be his coronation. But a nagging unease picked at the edges of his confidence. Harper. She was becoming unpredictable. Her quietness, which he had once mistaken for compliance, now felt like a form of judgment. The way she looked at him over dinner, her eyes unreadable, made his skin crawl. He hated that he couldn't decipher her, that a part of her remained stubbornly her own. And her hobby, Vaughn Innovations, was a source of constant, low-grade irritation. He didn't understand it, so he dismissed it. It was easier than admitting his wife might be brilliant in a field he couldn't comprehend. His unease crystallized into a plan during a lunch meeting 2 weeks before the gala. The meeting was with Scarlett Lawson. Scarlett was a junior associate at the firm, but she moved with the predatory grace of a panther. She had sharp, intelligent eyes, a razor wit, and an ambition that rivaled Gabriel's own. She had attached herself to him ostensibly as a mentee, but the dynamic was far more charged. She flattered his ego, hung on his every word, and made him feel like the titan of industry he so desperately wanted to be. She was everything he thought he wanted: ambitious, focused on his world, and utterly unimpressed by anything outside of it. They were seated at the Capitol Grill, a steakhouse where deals were sealed over $100 ribeyes. "Victoria Hale was singing your praises in the partners' meeting this morning," Scarlett said, leaning forward, her voice a low purr. "She said the Henderson account is practically yours if the gala goes smoothly." "It will," Gabriel said, straightening his tie. "There's just the matter of the guest list." Scarlett took a delicate sip of her wine. "Oh? Is there a problem?" Gabriel hesitated, feigning casualness. "Harper. She's not been herself lately. Very wrapped up in her little projects. I worry she'll be a distraction. You know how she can be, talking about things no one understands. It's not the right image." Scarlett's expression was a masterpiece of calculated sympathy. "That must be so difficult for you, Gabriel, to be on the cusp of something so great and have to worry about your partner reflecting the right image. Image is everything in our world." She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "The invitation did say, 'and guest,' didn't it? That's rather flexible. A seed of an idea, dark and treacherous, began to sprout in Gabriel's mind. He could just uninvite her. But the fallout, the questions, the sheer domestic unpleasantness of it was a deterrent. "It would be complicated," he said, testing the waters. Scarlett's smile was sharp. "Complications can be managed. Discretion is a lawyer's greatest tool, after all." She leaned in closer, her scent expensive and intoxicating, filling his senses. "Who is the gala coordinator? Melissa at the foundation, isn't it? She's a friend of my sister's. A single phone call, a plausible reason, a sudden illness, perhaps, a prior, unavoidable commitment she simply forgot about. It would be a shame for her to feel pressured to attend if she's not feeling up to it," Scarlett went on smoothly. "It would be a kindness, really. You'd be sparing her an evening she clearly wouldn't enjoy." She was a master at reframing betrayal as consideration. She gave him not just a plan, but a justification. He wouldn't be a villain. He would be a thoughtful husband. The idea took root and grew its thorny vines around his ambition. The vision of the gala solidified in his mind. Him at the podium, powerful and articulate. Scarlett at his table, looking up at him with undisguised admiration. And Harper would be at home, out of sight and out of mind, tending to her, whatever it was she did. The next day, Gabriel made the call. He waited until Harper had left for a rare off-site meeting. She hadn't bothered to explain. He closed the door to his study, his heart hammering against his ribs, a strange mixture of guilt and exhilarating freedom coursing through him. He dialed the number for the Starlight Foundation's event office. "May I speak with the coordinator? Gabriel Drake calling?" A moment later, the cheerful voice of the coordinator came on the line. "Gabriel, how lovely to hear from you. We're all so excited for the gala. Your support has been incredible." "Of course, happy to help," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Listen, I'm calling about a small, rather delicate matter regarding the guest list. There seems to have been a slight miscommunication on my end. My wife, Harper, unfortunately, she's going to be unable to attend." "Oh no, is everything all right?" He let out a perfectly crafted sigh. "She's been terribly run down lately, pushing herself too hard with a personal project. I've been insisting she take it easy, and she's finally agreed. She feels dreadful about it, of course, but her health must come first. She sends her deepest apologies." "Oh, the poor dear. Of course. We completely understand," the coordinator said, her voice dripping with sympathy. "Please send her our very best. So the ticket will just be for you then? Or will you be bringing a guest in her place? This was the moment. The final turn of the screw. Actually, yes, he said, as if the idea had just occurred to him. One of my junior associates, Scarlett Lawson, has been instrumental in preparing the briefing for the Henderson account. It would be an invaluable experience for her. Would it be possible to have the name on the seating card changed to hers? Not a problem at all, Gabriel. Consider it done. We'll have a place card for Ms. Scarlett Lawson at your table. Thank you. You're a lifesaver. I appreciate your discretion. Of course. He hung up the phone, a wave of relief washing over him. It was done. It had been so easy. He had surgically removed Harper from his big night. He stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city that felt like it was finally his for the taking. He felt no remorse, only a cold, clean sense of efficiency. He had identified a problem, an unpredictable variable, and he had eliminated it. That evening he was unusually charming to Harper. He brought home a bottle of her favorite Chardonnay, and didn't once mention the gala. He asked a perfunctory question about her day, and when she gave a vague answer, he accepted it without pressing. He was playing the part of the loving husband, a final deceptive performance before the curtain rose on his solo act. He watched her across the dinner table, this woman who was now a stranger to him. She was quiet, her thoughts hidden behind a calm facade. He mistook her silence for ignorance. He mistook her poise for passivity. He believed, with the full force of his arrogant heart, that she had no idea what was coming. He was convinced he held all the cards, blissfully unaware that Harper wasn't just playing a different game. She owned the entire casino. The weeks leading up to the gala were a masterclass in domestic theater. Gabriel was solicitous and attentive in a way he hadn't been for years, a performance of marital bliss designed to mask his treachery. He spoke of the gala with an air of detached importance, never once mentioning her attendance directly. He would talk about his speech, the seating chart, the importance of the Henderson account, all while carefully avoiding the one topic that should have been central, what she would be doing that night. Harper, for her part, played her role with unnerving perfection. She listened patiently, offered vague pleasantries, and never, ever asked the obvious question. What time should we leave? Her silence was a mirror reflecting his deception back at him, but he was too blinded by his own reflection to see it. He believed he was getting away with it. The discovery, when it came, was not a dramatic confrontation. There was no screaming match, no tearful accusation. It was quiet, digital, and devastatingly precise. Harper was in her office a week before the event, preparing for a quarterly board meeting for Vaughan Innovations. Her company had grown far beyond a hobby. It was now a silent giant in the tech world, with a board of directors composed of some of the sharpest minds in finance and technology. One of them was Chase Donovan, a semi-retired venture capitalist in his late 60s, a man with a legendary reputation for spotting talent and a deep-seated belief in ethical business practices. He had been one of Harper's earliest and most ardent supporters. She was reviewing the foundation's public donor information for her own philanthropic planning when she decided to check the gala's website. They often posted a list of the host committee and key attendees to build buzz. She navigated to the page, a knot of cold dread tightening in her stomach. And there it was. Under the heading for Host Committee, Table 1, printed in elegant digital script, Mr. Gabriel Drake, Sterling, Draper, and Pierce. Mr. and Mrs., names of other hosts, Mr. the Billionaire CEO, Henderson Corp. Miss, Scarlett Lawson, Sterling, Draper, and Pierce. Harper stared at the screen, her breath catching in her throat. Ms. Scarlett Lawson. The name was like a physical blow. It wasn't just that her own name was missing. It was the name that had replaced it. Scarlett, the slick, ambitious associate Gabriel had been mentoring. The woman whose perfume sometimes lingered on his suits. The betrayal was so cold, so clinical, it almost took her breath away. He hadn't just excluded her. He had replaced her. He had traded her in for a newer, more convenient model, an accessory that better matched his ambitions. The lie about her being unwell, which she now knew he must have told, was the most insulting part. He had painted her as weak and infirm to serve his own purpose. For a long moment she just sat there, the hum of her servers the only sound in the room. There was a surge of white-hot anger, a primal desire to storm into his study and throw the laptop at his head. She wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, to watch him squirm under the weight of his deceit. But then another feeling, colder and far more powerful, washed over her. Clarity. This was not just an insult, it was a declaration. He had declared that she was worthless to him. He had declared that their marriage was a sham. He had declared that she was an obstacle to be removed. And in his declaration, he had given her a gift: freedom. Freedom from pretense. Freedom from trying to salvage something that was already dead. Freedom to be exactly who she was, without apology. She didn't confront him. To do so would be to play his game, to descend into a messy, emotional battle that he would twist and manipulate. He would call her hysterical, paranoid. He would gaslight her into believing she was overreacting. No. A quiet execution was required. Her fingers, steady and deliberate, moved from the mouse to the telephone. She didn't call Gabriel. She didn't call a divorce lawyer. Not yet. She called Lucas Mercer, her brilliant lead engineer and trusted second-in-command. "Lucas," she said, her voice devoid of any emotion, "cancel my appointments for the rest of the afternoon and get me Chase Donovan on the line. Tell him it's about the Starlight Foundation." There was a pause on the other end. Lucas was perceptive. He knew her tone. This wasn't a business call. This was something else. "Right away, Harper," he said. No questions asked. While she waited for the call to be connected, Harper opened a new file on her computer. It was a secure, encrypted document. The title she typed was simple: Exit Strategy. A few minutes later, her private line buzzed. "Harper, my dear." Chase Donovan's warm, gravelly voice filled the room. "Lucas said it was urgent. Is everything all right with the Athena launch?" "The launch is perfect, Chase," Harper said, a new steely resolve hardening her voice. "Everything is going according to plan. In fact, I'm thinking of moving up the timeline for our new philanthropic division." "Oh?" Donovan sounded intrigued. "I thought that was a year away." "Plans change," Harper said, her eyes flicking back to the guest list on her screen. "I've just been made aware of a charity that I believe aligns perfectly with the values of Vaughn Innovations, the Starlight Foundation." "A fine organization," Donovan agreed. "Old money, a bit stuffy for my taste, but they do good work for the children." "Indeed," Harper said. "Their annual gala is next week. I understand they're still looking for a primary sponsor for the event. The Starlight sponsor, I believe they call it. The one that gets top billing." Donovan was silent for a moment, the gears turning in his shrewd mind. He knew Harper. He knew her methodical nature. This was not a whim. "That's a 7-figure commitment, Harper. A very public one." "I'm aware of the cost," she replied, her voice unwavering. "And the visibility is precisely the point. Chase, I need you to make a call. I want Vaughn Innovations to be the sole premier sponsor of the Starlight Foundation Gala. I want our name on everything. The banners, the program, the stage, and I want it done by the end of business tomorrow. Can you make that happen?" There was another, longer pause. Chase Donovan didn't get to where he was by being slow on the uptake. He could sense the undercurrents, the unspoken story behind this sudden, massive commitment. He didn't need to know the details. He just needed to know his faith in her was well placed. "Consider it done," he said finally, a hint of admiration in his voice. "They'll be falling over themselves. The publicity for us will be immense." "The publicity is secondary," Harper said softly, her gaze locking onto the name Scarlett Lawson. "This is about sending a message, a clear, unambiguous message." She ended the call and leaned back in her chair. The anger had subsided, replaced by an icy calm. Gabriel thought he was closing a door on her. He had no idea she was about to buy the entire building and evict him. The game had changed. He had made his move, and now she was about to make hers. And it would not be a quiet one. The week that followed was a marvel of silent, furious activity. For Gabriel, it was a week of blissful ignorance. He was consumed with polishing his speech, coordinating with Scarlett on talking points, and basking in the preemptive glory of his impending triumph. He saw Harper's quiet demeanor as submission, her long hours in her office as her retreating into her irrelevant world. He felt smug, secure, and utterly in control. For Harper, it was a week of strategic warfare, waged not with shouting and tears, but with emails, conference calls, and the silent, immense power of her wealth. She was not a woman scorned. She was a CEO executing a hostile takeover of her own narrative. Her first move after securing the premier sponsorship through Chase Donovan was to place a call to the Starlight Foundation's coordinator. She didn't mention Gabriel. She introduced herself as the CEO of Vaughn Innovations, the Gala's new Starlight sponsor. "Ms. Vaughn, this is—" "I'm speechless," the coordinator said, flabbergasted and ecstatic. "Your generosity is simply overwhelming. Mr. Donovan explained that you wished for us to proceed with the utmost discretion until the night of the gala." "That is correct," Harper said, her voice cool and professional. "My company values privacy. We prefer our work to speak for itself. However, I will be attending. Of course, I'll need a seat." "Of course, absolutely. We have you at the head table." "Naturally." The coordinator shuffled her seating chart. "Oh, there seems to be a slight issue. Table 1 is the host committee table, headed by Gabriel Drake of Sterling, Draper, and Pierce. He has a full guest list." Harper let the silence hang for a beat. "I'm sure Mr. Drake, whose firm does so much work for the foundation, will be more than happy to accommodate the event's primary sponsor. Please add a seat for me at that table. I'm sure you can make it work." Her tone was polite, but left no room for negotiation. "Yes, of course, Ms. Vaughn. Right away." "One more thing," Harper added. "Under no circumstances are you to inform Mr. Drake of this change or of my company's sponsorship. Let's keep it a surprise for the evening. A little dramatic flair for the big reveal, don't you think?" Picturing the moment a mystery benefactor would be revealed, the coordinator readily agreed. "A wonderful idea, Ms. Vaughn. It will be the talk of the town." Next, Harper focused on her appearance. Gabriel had wanted her to be soft and approachable. He had requested the Milan sapphire dress. Harper sold the dress online that afternoon. Then she made a call to a private couturier, a woman known for creating gowns that were less dresses and more works of art. Armor for the modern woman. "I need something for a gala," Harper explained over a video call, the designer's chic Parisian studio in the background. "The theme is Starlight. I am not a guest. I am the main event. I want to look like I own the stars, not just gaze at them." The designer's eyes lit up with creative fire. They settled on a design of midnight black silk, custom woven with fine, platinum-like threads that would catch the light like a constellation. It would be sleeveless, with a sharp, architectural neckline that conveyed power, not pliability. It was a gown that would demand attention, a dress that did not ask for permission. To go with it, she commissioned a striking necklace and earrings, not of soft diamonds, but of raw, uncut sapphires set in jagged modern platinum. Beautiful, but with an edge of danger. While her public armor was being forged, Harper worked on her business. She called a special meeting with her PR and marketing team. "The Athena project is launching in Q4, she told them, her voice ringing with authority. "But I want the pre-launch buzz to begin next week, specifically on the night of the Starlight Gala. I want a coordinated press release to go out to every major tech and business journal at precisely 9 p.m. that evening. The release will announce Vaughn Innovations as the Starlight sponsor, and it will also announce the revolutionary capabilities of Athena. I want our stock price to be the second biggest story of the night." Her team, sensing the shift in their usually reserved CEO, scrambled to comply, a current of excitement running through them. Finally, she prepared herself. This wasn't just about humiliating Gabriel. That was a byproduct, a satisfying one, but not the ultimate goal. The goal was her liberation. It was about drawing a line so deep and clear in the sand that he could never cross it again. It was about reclaiming her identity, not as Mrs. Gabriel Drake, but as Harper Vaughn, founder and CEO of a company she had built from nothing. On the night of the gala, the penthouse was still and quiet. Gabriel was in their master suite, whistling as he put on his tuxedo. He felt like a king surveying his domain. He had laid his plans perfectly. Harper was in the guest wing, an area of the apartment he hadn't entered in months. Her dress was laid out on the bed, the dark fabric seeming to absorb the light in the room. Her jewelry glittered on the nightstand like captured starlight. Lucas had arranged for a private car to collect her. She would not be arriving with the throng of guests, but at the precise moment of the sponsor reveal. At 7, Gabriel knocked on the door of their bedroom, where he assumed she was. "Harper, I'm heading out now. Scarlett is meeting me there." From the far end of the long hallway, behind the closed door of the guest suite, Harper heard him. She stood before a full-length mirror, a vision of midnight and power. She said nothing. Her silence was her answer. Gabriel waited another moment, then shrugged, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "All right then, have a quiet night in," he called out, his voice dripping with false sympathy. He turned and walked out the door, jingling his car keys, leaving his quiet, unassuming wife behind. He felt a pang of something, but he crushed it. It was the price of ambition, he told himself. Harper watched from her window as his car pulled away from the curb, a sleek silver bullet disappearing into the city's glittering chaos. She took a deep, steadying breath. She wasn't being left behind. She was being unleashed. The architect had laid the plans. The trap was set. Now all she had to do was make her entrance. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel was a symphony of opulence. Crystal chandeliers, each the size of a small car, cast a dazzling, fractured light over a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns. The air hummed with the sound of clinking champagne flutes, discreet gossip, and the powerful, confident laughter of the city's elite. Gabriel Drake moved through the crowd like a conquering hero, with the stunning Scarlett Lawson on his arm. He felt invincible. Her dress was a vibrant crimson, a stark and deliberate contrast to the soft look he had demanded of Harper. She was a statement piece, and her presence signaled his new direction. "You've truly outdone yourself, Gabriel," said Victoria Hale, the firm's senior partner, clapping him on the back. "A full table. Henderson is here. The night is already a success." "We aim to please, Victoria," Gabriel replied smoothly, squeezing Scarlett's hand. "We're just getting started." He seated himself at the head table, right in the center, a king holding court. He surveyed the room, a deep sense of satisfaction settling in his chest. Everything was perfect. Every person was in their place. Across the table, the billionaire CEO whose account he was courting gave him a cordial nod. Scarlett was whispering something amusing to the wife of another partner. There was no sign of Harper, no awkward questions, no prying eyes. He had achieved a clean cut. The evening progressed exactly as he had envisioned. The dinner was exquisite, the wine flowed freely, and the preliminary speeches were brief and witty. Gabriel felt the warm glow of success, and several glasses of champagne. He leaned over to Scarlett, his voice a low murmur. "See? What did I tell you?" "Flawless," she whispered back, her eyes gleaming. "No distractions, just you." Finally, the moment arrived. The lights dimmed slightly, and the chairman of the Starlight Foundation took the stage. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome," he began, his voice echoing through the ballroom. "On behalf of the children, we thank you for your incredible generosity tonight. We have raised a record-breaking amount, and it is thanks to every single one of you." A polite round of applause rippled through the room. "But every year," the chairman continued, his tone becoming more dramatic, "there is one donor whose contribution transcends generosity, one partner who steps up to become the very foundation of this event, our Starlight sponsor." Gabriel sat up straighter, a self-satisfied smile on his face. He knew the usual corporate sponsors. It would be a bank or a major corporation. He was ready to lead the applause for whichever faceless entity had paid for the night. "This year, we were approached by a new partner," the chairman announced, a genuine sense of excitement in his voice, a true visionary, a silent force in an industry that is all about noise, a leader who has built an empire not on who they know, but on what they can create. A murmur went through the crowd. This was not the usual script. Gabriel glanced at Scarlett, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Scarlett shrugged, equally perplexed. "This company and its founder represent the future," the chairman boomed. "They represent innovation, integrity, and the brilliant, unstoppable power of a single revolutionary idea. Their work in data security is changing the world, ensuring a safer future for the very children we seek to protect." Gabriel felt a strange, cold prickle on the back of his neck. Data security, revolutionary idea. The word sounded vaguely, horribly familiar. He looked around the room, expecting to see some well-known tech CEO step into the light. "It is my profound honor," the chairman declared, his voice reaching a crescendo, "to announce this year's Starlight sponsor, a company that has truly lit up our night, Vaughn Innovations." The name hit Gabriel like a physical force. Vaughn Innovations, Harper's hobby, her little project. He felt the blood drain from his face. It couldn't be. It was a coincidence. Some other Vaughn. But the chairman wasn't finished. "And please, everyone, get on your feet as we welcome the architect of this incredible generosity, the founder and CEO of Vaughn Innovations, Ms. Harper Vaughn." As he spoke the name, the grand double doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open, and there she stood. For a moment, there was complete silence. A collective intake of breath from 300 of the city's most powerful people. Harper paused at the threshold, a figure of breathtaking power and control. Her gown of midnight silk drank the light, the platinum threads shimmering like a distant galaxy. The raw sapphires at her throat were not gentle jewels. They were shards of the night sky, bold and defiant. Her hair was swept back in an elegant, severe style that highlighted the determined line of her jaw. She was not soft. She was not approachable. She was magnificent. Then the reaction began. It started at the front with Chase Donovan, who was already on his feet, a proud smile on his face. Then others, recognizing the name from burgeoning tech articles, or simply stunned by the sheer drama of the moment, rose to their feet. The applause started scattered at first, then grew into a deafening, rolling wave of sound. One by one, table by table, the entire room stood. They were not just applauding a donor, they were bearing witness to an arrival. Gabriel remained frozen in his chair, a statue of pure shock. His champagne glass was still in his hand. He stared, his mind unable to process what his eyes were seeing. This was not his wife. This was not the quiet, unassuming woman he had left at home. This was a supernova, a celestial event clad in midnight silk and captured starlight. Scarlett Lawson was equally stunned, her face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. Her crimson dress, which had seemed so bold and vibrant moments before, now looked garish and cheap next to Harper's celestial elegance. She looked from Harper to Gabriel and saw the color completely vanish from his face. She had hitched her wagon to a falling star. Harper's eyes scanned the standing crowd, her expression calm and regal. She gave a small, dignified nod of thanks, and then her gaze moved, deliberately, slowly, across the room until it landed on table 1. It swept past the stunned faces of partners and patrons, and finally it settled on Gabriel. She did not smile. She did not glare. Her look was one of cool, dispassionate assessment. It was the look a CEO gives a redundant employee, a look that said, "You are irrelevant." As the applause thundered around them, Harper began to walk. She didn't hurry. Her steps were measured, her posture perfect. She moved through the standing crowd, who parted for her as if by royal decree. Her destination was clear, the empty seat at the head table, the seat that the coordinator had, as instructed, squeezed in between Victoria Hale and Gabriel Drake. The seat that now indisputably belonged to her. The sound hit Gabriel first. It wasn't just applause, it was a physical force, a concussive wave of sound that seemed to press him down into his velvet-upholstered chair. 300 of the city's most influential figures were on their feet, their faces turned not to the double doors at the back of the ballroom, to her. His mind stuttered, refusing to assemble the pieces into the terrifying picture his eyes were showing him. As she began to walk, Gabriel felt a primal urge to hide, to shrink under the table. Every step she took toward him was a drumbeat marking the seconds to his own execution. The faces she passed, people he had spent years trying to impress, turned to her with awe, their expressions a mixture of shock and profound admiration. They were a jury, and with every hand clap, they were delivering their verdict. He was frozen in a nightmare of his own design. The solitary, seated fool in a sea of standing worshippers beside a woman in a garish crimson dress who now looked as lost and terrified as he felt. For Harper, the applause was distant noise, the background music to the single clear purpose that propelled her forward. She had spent years navigating rooms like this as a shadow, her presence acknowledged only through her husband. Tonight she was not an accessory. She was the focal point. She saw faces she recognized, rival CEOs, banking scions, society doyens, their mouths slightly agape. In their eyes she saw her own reflection, not as Mrs. Drake, but as the powerful, enigmatic Ms. Vaughn, the identity she had forged in silence, now revealed in a symphony of acclaim. Her deliberate, unhurried pace brought her to table 1. The air here was thick with unspoken shock. A waiter, his professionalism a small island of calm in the chaos, smoothly pulled out the chair that had been squeezed between Victoria Hale and Gabriel. It was a throne disguised as a seat. Victoria Hale, a woman whose face was usually an inscrutable mask, recovered first. The flicker of rage in her eyes at being so thoroughly blindsided was quickly replaced by the shrewd calculation of a master strategist. She saw the new chessboard laid out before her. "Harper," she boomed, her voice a theatrical performance of delight as she took Harper's hand. Her grip was firm, respectful. "My dear, we are speechless, absolutely speechless." She wasn't just being polite. She was publicly aligning herself with the new center of power. "Your generosity, your vision, it is a profound honor to have you with us." Harper inclined her head, accepting the tribute. "Victoria, a pleasure to see you looking so well." Her calm reply was a masterstroke, establishing that she was not overwhelmed but entirely in her element. She then turned to the billionaire CEO, whose account Gabriel had been so desperate to land. A gruff, self-made man with no patience for pretense, he was already on his feet, his grin wide and genuine. He admired strength, and he was looking at its personification. "Ms. Vaughn," he said, bypassing others to shake her hand, "the honor is all mine. I just read a preliminary brief on ethical data encryption last month. I had no idea the mind behind it was right here in our city. Gabriel, you sly dog. You never mentioned your wife was a titan." The comment was ostensibly a compliment to Gabriel, but the undertone was sharp, questioning. Gabriel felt a flush of heat crawl up his neck. He saw a lifeline and grabbed it with clumsy desperation. He pushed himself to his feet, trying to arrange his face into a mask of proud, surprised delight. "Darling," he exclaimed, his voice a strained, unnatural imitation of joy. "What a surprise! You should have told me you were planning something so spectacular. I was so worried when you said you felt unwell." He reached for her arm, attempting to reclaim his role as the husband, the one who was in on the secret. Harper moved her arm just slightly, an almost imperceptible motion, but enough that his hand grasped only empty air. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and her gaze was as cold and clear as Arctic ice. "Unwell," she repeated, her voice dangerously soft, yet it cut through the lingering buzz at the table. "No, Gabriel. I believe the word you're looking for is underestimated, but I've never felt better." The public rejection, the quiet correction of his lie, landed like a perfectly thrown dagger. Gabriel flinched, his pathetic smile dissolving. The blood drained from his face, leaving behind a waxy, pale sheen. Having dismissed him, Harper's gaze swept past him and settled, for the first time, on Scarlett Lawson. Scarlett, who had been frozen in a state of horrified paralysis, visibly shrank under the cool, appraising look. It was not a look of anger or jealousy. It was a look of utter indifference, the kind one gives to a piece of lint on an otherwise perfect garment. Harper did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She gestured almost imperceptibly to a passing captain. "Excuse me," she said, her tone one of polite concern. "I believe there has been a seating error. This young lady seems to have lost her way from the junior associates section, over there." She gestured vaguely toward the back of the ballroom. "Perhaps you could help her find her correct table." The humiliation was absolute, a masterpiece of public execution. She hadn't called Scarlett a homewrecker or a schemer. She had done something far worse. She had rendered her completely and utterly insignificant. A lost intern, a non-entity. Scarlett's face, already flushed, turned a deep, blotchy scarlet. Her eyes darted to Gabriel, pleading for him to say something, to defend her, to do anything. But Gabriel was a hollowed-out man, incapable of defending himself, let alone her. He just stared at his plate, his world collapsing inward. With a choked sob, Scarlett grabbed her ridiculously small, ridiculously expensive clutch, her hands trembling. She pushed her chair back so violently it nearly toppled over. Without a single word, she turned and fled, weaving through the tables in a walk of pure shame, the whispers and stares of the city's elite following her like vultures. Gabriel watched her go, another pillar of his fantasy world turning to sand. And in that precise moment, as if orchestrated by a vengeful god of timing, a new sound filled the room, It started as a few isolated vibrations, then spread, a digital wave washing over the ballroom. It was the synchronized buzz and chime of hundreds of smartphones receiving a notification. At exactly 9 p.m., Harper's pre-timed press release had gone live. Victoria Hale, ever the professional, discreetly pulled her phone from her pocket. Her eyes scanned the screen, and her jaw tightened. She read the headline from the Wall Street Journal. Vaughn Innovations' secret CEO, Harper Vaughn, revealed in seven-figure philanthropic coup, announces revolutionary Athena encryption suite. The story wasn't just about the Gala. It was about a massive corporate move, a disruption in the tech world. Victoria looked at the stock futures for Vaughn Innovations, already spiking in after-hours trading. She looked at Harper, who was calmly sipping her water, a portrait of serene control. And then she looked at the pathetic, sweating man beside her, her partner, who had not only hidden this immense asset from the firm, but had actively tried to discard her in favor of a junior associate on the most important night of the year. The sheer, monumental stupidity of it was breathtaking. Victoria leaned toward Gabriel, her voice no longer booming but a low, lethal hiss that was far more terrifying. "Gabriel, my office, tomorrow morning 7 a.m., sharp." She paused, letting the dread build. "Don't bother bringing a briefcase. Just bring your resignation." Before Gabriel could process the words that had just ended his career, the chairman was back at the podium, his face beaming. "And now," he announced joyfully, "we would like to invite our Starlight sponsor, the brilliant Ms. Harper Vaughn, to say a few words." The spotlight swung back, illuminating Harper as she rose. The applause was even louder this time, thunderous and sustained. She moved past her husband without a single glance, her gown shimmering as she ascended the few steps to the stage. She was no longer just a donor. She was a visionary, a leader, the undisputed star of the night. She reached the podium, and the room fell silent. She looked out over the sea of faces, her gaze poised and confident. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady and resonant. "They say that starlight is a message from the past, a glimmer from something that has been burning brightly for millions of years, even if we've only just noticed its light. In my world, in technology, we don't look to the past. We build the future. We build foundations that are strong enough to support the grandest of structures. We create fortresses to protect what is most valuable." She paused, her eyes sweeping the room before landing, briefly, meaningfully, on the wreckage at Table 1. Sometimes the most revolutionary potential lies hidden, overlooked, or simply underestimated. But true value, like a star, cannot be hidden forever. Eventually, its light reaches you. My company, Vaughn Innovations, is honored to support the Starlight Foundation, which does the vital work of ensuring that the potential within every child is seen, nurtured, and given a chance to shine. Thank you. It was short, it was elegant, and for Gabriel, every word was a perfectly aimed blow. She had spoken of building fortresses, of hidden value, of the folly of overlooking true potential. She had delivered his eulogy without ever speaking his name. The standing ovation that followed was explosive. Gabriel remained seated, a ghost at the feast. The whispers and pointed looks were now unbearable. He couldn't breathe. He pushed himself to his feet, his movements clumsy and uncoordinated. He turned his back on the stage, where his wife was being celebrated, and began his own walk of shame. No one tried to stop him. No one seemed to notice him at all. He stumbled out of the grand ballroom, the golden light and the sound of her triumph spilling out behind him, before the heavy doors swung shut, plunging him into the quiet, indifferent hallway. He was alone. The silence that greeted him was 1,000 times louder than the applause. He had wanted to erase her, but in the end he had only succeeded in erasing himself. Gabriel thought he was playing chess, but Harper owned the entire board. What an ending! Harper's silent power move is the ultimate lesson. The best response to being silenced is to become the one holding the microphone. If you loved this story of justice, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this video, and be sure to subscribe for more stories where the underestimated always get the last laugh. And I have to ask, what do you think Victoria Hale really said to Gabriel in that 7 a.m. meeting? Drop your best theories in the comments below.
He called her his queen. They had the perfect life, a coastal home, and a baby on the way. But on a foggy cliffside, he made a business decision. He pushed his pregnant wife into the sea to make room for a billionaire heiress. He held a memorial, grieved for the cameras, and built an empire on her grave. He just made one mistake. He didn't make sure she was dead. 6 years later, a mysterious woman just walked into his boardroom, and she's here to collect. The fog clinging to the Oregon coastline was thick as wet wool, swallowing the tops of the towering Sitka spruce. Clara Hayes pulled her cashmere cardigan tighter, her hand resting instinctively over the taut swell of her belly. 6 months. 6 months of a life growing inside her, a life she and Marcus had meticulously planned. "Isn't it breathtaking, Clara?" Marcus Thorne called back to her. He stood near the edge of Osprey Point, a sheer drop of 200 feet to the jagged, foam-laced rocks below. He looked, as he always did, like a man carved from more expensive material than everyone else. His tailored windbreaker didn't flap. It settled. "It's a long way down, Marcus," she said, her voice betraying a tremor. It wasn't just the height. It was a pinprick of unease she'd been trying to ignore all morning. This baby moon hike had been his idea. Everything was his idea. He laughed, a warm, resonant sound that always charmed investors and disarmed rivals. "That's the point, darling. Living on the edge. Come on, the view is best from here." Clara hesitated. She was clumsy lately, her center of gravity a foreign concept. "I don't know. My ankles are swelling." He walked back, his smile unwavering, but his eyes... Was that impatience? No, she was just being a hormonal mess. He took her hand, his palm warm. "I'll hold you. I won't let anything happen to you. Or to Leo." Leo, their name for the sonogram blob that had become her entire world. The name that made Marcus's eyes light up. He led her to the precipice. The wind whipped her hair across her face, stinging her eyes with salt. The roar of the surf was a physical force, a deep vibration in her chest. "See?" he said, his voice close to her ear, his arms encircling her from behind, one hand splayed possessively over their child. "This is our kingdom, Clara. Just you, me, and him. We're untouchable." He was the architect of their life. When they met, she was just Clara Hayes, quiet inheritor of a shipping fortune she didn't know how to manage. He was Marcus Thorne, a brilliant, hungry analyst with a minor title and major ambition. He'd folded her inheritance into his nascent private equity firm, multiplying it, absorbing it, until hers and his became simply his. She didn't mind. He was the expert. She was content to manage their homes, their social calendar, their future nursery. The power imbalance was a comfort, a blanket. "I love you, Marcus," she murmured, leaning back into his strength. "I love you too," he said. His voice was different now, flat, dead. The fog swirled, momentarily clearing to reveal the violent, churning Pacific. "Marcus?" she asked, a sudden, cold dread seizing her. His hand on her stomach felt less like a caress and more like a grip. "You know, Clara," he said, his tone conversational, as if discussing a stock portfolio, "I've been running the numbers, and the truth is, you and Leo, you're a liability." "What? What are you talking about? Marcus, you're scaring me." She tried to turn, but his grip tightened. "I met someone, Serafina Van Doren." The name hit her. The Van Doren dynasty. Old money. The kind that dwarfed her own. The kind Marcus had always craved. She understands the scale I want to operate on," he continued, his voice almost apologetic. "Her family will only accept me if Entanglements are resolved. And she's pregnant, Clara. A fresh start. A clean one. Tears streamed down her face, instantly cold on her skin. No, Marcus, please. We have Leo. We have us. There is no us, Clara. There is only me and my future. She felt his hands shift from her belly to the small of her back. The warmth was gone, replaced by a firm, methodical pressure. It's just business, darling, he whispered. She opened her mouth to scream, but the wind stole the sound. He pushed. It wasn't a violent shove. It was a calm, calculated transfer of weight. Her swollen, unbalanced body had no defense. She teetered for one agonizing, impossible second at the void. His eyes were the last thing she saw. Not hateful, not angry, just empty, resolved. Then she was falling. The air tore at her, a brutal shriek in her ears. She saw the rocks, black and sharp as teeth, rushing up to meet her. She twisted instinctively, a primal, useless attempt to shield her womb. Leo, my baby, my baby. The impact was not a sharp pain. It was an explosion, a shattering of bone, a crushing pressure, and then the inconceivable, paralyzing cold of the Pacific. The last thing she knew before the blackness took her was the betrayal, a cold more profound than the ocean, and the impossible, agonizing cramp as her body tried to expel the life she'd failed to protect. Pain was the first country she returned to. It was a gray, throbbing landscape. Then came the sounds, the rhythmic, electronic beep, the sterile whisper of recycled air. She smelled antiseptic and, faintly, jasmine. Her eyes fluttered open. The ceiling was not the gray Oregon sky. It was smooth white plaster. She was in a bed. A tube snaked into her arm. A man sat in a chair by the window, backlit by an impossible golden sun she didn't recognize. He was older, in his late 60s, with a neatly trimmed gray beard and skin the color of warm teak. He wore a simple, elegant linen shirt. He looked up from the book in his lap, his eyes dark and kind. "Ah," he said, his voice a gentle baritone with a Middle Eastern accent. "You are awake. Do not try to move. You are very broken." Clara tried to speak, but her throat was raw. "Where?" "You are in a private clinic, in Dubai." "Dubai." The word was meaningless. "How?" "My crew found you," he said, closing his book. "I was on my yacht, off the Oregon coast. We were fishing. We saw something in the water, caught on the rocks as the tide went out. We thought you were dead, but my physician on board found a pulse." The memories crashed in. The fog, the cliff. Marcus. Leo. Her hand flew to her stomach. The swell was gone. A flat, barren emptiness. "The baby," she gasped, the word tearing from her raw throat. "My baby, Leo, is he?" The man's kind eyes filled with a profound, shared sorrow. He didn't need to say the words. A wail, thin and animalistic, escaped her. It was the sound of a universe ending. "The fall, it induced labor," he said softly, walking to her bedside. When they got you onto the boat, you were all ready. He was born on the yacht, a little boy. He lived for 7 minutes." "No," she whispered. No, he was safe. He was not safe," the man said, his voice hardening for a fraction of a second. "You were attacked." "I fell," she said, the lie automatic. "You had a shattered pelvis, 2 broken legs, a fractured skull, and deep bruising on your back consistent with a forceful push," the man said. "I am Karim al-Jamil, and I do not suffer fools, nor do I abide monsters." "You did not fall." She stared at him, the tears now flowing hot and fast. She had nothing. She was nothing. Her body was destroyed. Her son was dead. The man who was her life had tried to murder her. "What is your name?" he asked. Clara Hayes." Karim nodded. He retrieved a tablet from the table. He typed, then turned it to her. It was an obituary from a Seattle newspaper. "Clara Hayes, 32, beloved wife of financier Marcus Thorne, dies in tragic hiking accident. lost while hiking with her husband. Her body and that of her unborn child, presumably washed out to sea. A memorial service will be held. She was dead. The world tilted. Marcus hadn't just pushed her, he had erased her. He was at a memorial service, accepting condolences, playing the part of the grieving widower. The audacity, the sheer cold-blooded control of it, was more terrifying than the fall itself. "He won," she whispered, the fight draining out of her, leaving only the gray landscape of pain. "Did he?" Karim asked. He pulled the chair closer. "I, too, lost my family, my wife and my daughter. A drunk driver in Riyadh 15 years ago. I know this emptiness, this end. I know what it is to be a ghost." He leaned in, his gaze intense. "But you, my dear, are not a ghost. You are a survivor. The world thinks Clara Hayes is dead. Perhaps she should be." She looked at him, confused. "You have two choices," he said. "We can fly you back to Oregon. You can go to the police. You, a broken woman, against a wealthy, powerful man who has already written your ending. You will be called hysterical, traumatized, a liar. He will buy the best lawyers, the best doctors, to prove you are insane. Or," he offered her a glass of water, his hand steady. "Or," he continued, "Clara Hayes is dead. The fall killed her. The grief killed her. But someone new, someone forged from this pain, someone with my resources and my protection. She can be born. You can learn. You can heal. You can become strong. And one day you can choose to do what needs to be done." Clara drank the water. It was cool. It was real. Her son was dead. 7 minutes. He had lived for 7 minutes, alone and cold on a stranger's boat. The grief solidified. It didn't lessen. It calcified, turning from a fragile, agonizing pain into something hard. Something heavy, something she could use. She looked at Karim al-Jamil, this kind stranger who spoke of monstrosity and rebirth. "Clara is dead," she said, her voice a hoarse rasp. "She died on those rocks." "Who, then?" Karim asked. "Am I speaking to?" She thought of the fire, the betrayal, the ash of her old life. She thought of a new name, a new purpose. "Amina," she whispered. It was her grandmother's name, a name of strength. "Amina al-Jamil." Karim smiled, a sad, determined smile. "Then welcome, Amina. Your education begins today. 6 years. 6 years is a lifetime. It's long enough for shattered bones to fuse, though they ache on rainy days. It's long enough for skin grafts to fade, leaving a pale, silvery map of pain on her back and side. It's long enough for grief to be hammered and folded, like Damascus steel, into a purpose. New York City was a far cry from Dubai's serene, sun-scorched luxury, and even further from Oregon's damp green melancholy. From the 80th floor office of Al-Jamil Holdings, the city was a silent, glittering circuit board. Amina al-Jamil stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, not as Clara Hayes, but as someone else entirely. Clara had been soft, trusting, with long, honey-blonde hair and a gentle smile. Amina was angular, sharp. Her hair was cut in a severe dark brown bob. Her eyes, once a warm hazel, seemed colder, sharper, aided by subtle contact lenses that gave them a piercing amber tint. She wore a bespoke Tom Ford suit, the lines immaculate. Karim's plastic surgeons had been artists, but her new face was the least of her transformations. Karim had become the father she'd never truly had. He hadn't just healed her, he'd armed her. She'd devoured MBAs from INSEAD and Wharton. She learned to read financial reports like a predator reads a blood trail. She mastered 4 languages. She was his proxy, his heiress, his niece, and the most ruthless negotiator in his $50 billion investment firm. "The Thorne-Van Doren merger is complete, Madame al-Jamil," her analyst, a sharp young man named David, said from his desk. "They're finalizing the flagship project, the Astor Tower on the Hudson." "I've seen the plans," Amina said, her voice smooth, the accent a cultivated, untraceable blend of British and Arabic. "Grossly overleveraged. He's using the Van Doren assets as collateral for a vanity project. It's his baby, David said. Amina's hand tightened on the tablet she was holding. He doesn't deserve one. David, unaware of the venom in that simple statement, continued. They're the city's golden couple. Marcus Thorne, CEO, Serafina Van Doren Thorne, chairwoman of the philanthropy board. They have a son, 5 years old, named Spencer. 5 years old. Just a year younger than Leo would have been. The calculation was brutal. Serafina had been pregnant too. Marcus had chosen. He'd eliminated one family to make way for another. The neatness of it, the tidiness of his betrayal, still had the power to choke her. David, she said, turning from the window, I want you to start acquiring debt. Quietly. I want the secondary and tertiary lenders for the Astra Tower. Find the shell companies that hold the bonds for their construction materials, their labor contracts. I want all of it. Use the Geneva Fund. No one traces it back to Al Jamil. That's a significant position, madam, against a very stable-looking target. They look stable, Amina corrected, but their foundation is rotten. A building like that, it's all about cash flow. Let's see what happens when we squeeze the pipes. As you wish. When he left, Amina opened a secure file on her personal server. It was her only link to Clara. It held grainy photos of Marcus and Serafina at galas, at the park with their son. Spencer, a happy, laughing boy. She felt a toxic, burning jealousy that she quickly smothered. This wasn't about the boy. It was about the man who thought he could build a new life on the bones of his first. She studied Marcus. He was older, more distinguished. The same charm, the same predatory smile. He looked vital, happy, untouched. She studied Serafina, blonde, poised, old money made manifest. She held Marcus's arm with a grip that was as much ownership as affection. She was complicit. Amina knew it in her bones. A woman like that didn't marry a man like Marcus without a full accounting of his assets and liabilities. And Clara Hayes had been a liability. The first 6 years had been about healing, about becoming, about building. Now the demolition could begin. She had tracked his every move, his every success. She knew his routines, his vices, his weaknesses. His greatest weakness was his pride, his belief that he was the smartest man in any room. Her plan was not a quick, emotional confrontation. That was Clara's move. Amina's plan was a siege, a slow, methodical financial strangulation. She wouldn't just expose him. She would dismantle him. She would take his money, his power, his reputation, and his precious new family. She would leave him with nothing but the truth. The Met Gala invitations arrived, her assistant buzzed over the intercom, and the advance list. Mr. and Mrs. Thorne are confirmed to be in attendance. Amina looked at her reflection in the dark glass. The stranger stared back, cool and ready. Good, she said, accept. And book me a fitting with design. I want to be memorable. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was a sea of manufactured chaos. Flashes popped like miniature supernovas, and the roar of the press was a dull wave against the high stone walls. The theme was gilded dynasties, and no one embodied it more than Marcus and Serafina Thorne. Marcus, in a flawless custom Brioni tux, waved to the crowd, his arm firmly around Serafina's waist. She was a vision in archival Dior, a river of gold sequins, her neck ablaze with Van Doren diamonds. They were the apex, the goal. Marcus, darling, the Rockefellers are waving, Serafina murmured, her smile a perfect polished mask. Let them wait, he whispered back, kissing her temple. Tonight is about us. The Astra Tower is breaking ground. We're untouchable. They moved inside, parting the sea of celebrities and old money. They were halfway up the grand staircase when the energy in the room shifted. The flashes at the entrance intensified, the murmur of the crowd coalescing into a single focused, "Who is that?" Marcus and Serafina turned. Amina Al-Jamel was making her entrance. She wore a gown of deep, midnight blue velvet, almost black. It was structurally severe, with a high collar and long sleeves, but cut so precisely to her form that it was more sensual than any naked dress. Her only jewelry was a pair of staggering, pear-shaped diamond earrings. Her dark hair was slicked back, her makeup stark and perfect. She didn't smile. She moved with a silent, liquid grace, Karim al-Jamil, her stately protector, on her arm. "My God," Serafina breathed, her grip tightening on Marcus's arm. "That's Amina al-Jamil, of the Al-Jamil Holdings Fund. What is she doing here?" Marcus's eyes narrowed. He'd heard of her, a shark, a recluse, a trillion-dollar ghost who managed the wealth of half the Gulf. And she was here, in his world. "She's a new name on the acquisitions committee," Marcus said, his voice tight. "She must have made a last-minute donation." He straightened his tie, the predator in him instinctively recognizing a new powerful player. "I need to meet her." "Marcus, don't," Serafina hissed. "She's dangerous. I've heard stories." "All the more reason," he said, detaching his arm and moving toward the staircase. Amina saw him coming. She'd been waiting for this moment for 190 days. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird in a cage of her own making. "Breathe. You are Amina. Clara is dead." "Mr. Al-Jamil, Madam Al-Jamil," a museum director gushed, intercepting them. "We are so honored by your presence. Your contribution to the new wing is transformative." "We are delighted to be here," Karim said, his voice a smooth, calming balm. "Madam Al-Jamil," Marcus said, stepping into her line of sight, flashing his billion-dollar smile. "Marcus Thorne, a pleasure to finally put a face to the name that's been rattling the markets." Amina turned to him slowly. She let her gaze travel up, from his perfectly shined shoes, over his expensive suit, to his handsome, smiling face. The face from her nightmares. The last face she'd seen before the fall. She felt a cold, visceral sickness. She wanted to claw his eyes out. She wanted to scream. Instead, she offered him a cool, ungloved hand. Her touch was brief, dry, and cold. "Mr. Thorne," she said. Her voice, the one she'd spent years perfecting, was flawless. "I've heard of you, of course." He held her hand a fraction of a second too long. "All good, I hope." "That would depend," she said, withdrawing her hand, "on which side of the balance sheet you're on." Marcus laughed, though his eyes didn't. "A true financier. I was just admiring your entrance. You've certainly made an impression." "I find it's more effective to be decisive," Amina replied. "This is my guardian, Karim al-Jamil." Marcus shook Karim's hand, recognizing the true source of the power. "Sir, an honor." "Mr. Thorne," Karim said, his smile polite but his eyes like chips of obsidian. Serafina had drifted over, her golden smile plastered on, her eyes tiny slits of calculation. "Marcus, darling, you must introduce us." "Of course. Serafina, my wife. This is Madam Amina al-Jamil." "A pleasure," Serafina said, extending a hand. "Your gown is arresting, as is your heritage," Amina replied, her gaze flicking to the diamonds. "They must be heavy." The double meaning hung in the air. Serafina's smile faltered. "We're just celebrating the launch of our new flagship, the Astra Tower," Marcus said, trying to regain control. "A new icon for the New York skyline." "Ah, yes, the Astra," Amina said, taking a flute of champagne from a passing tray. "A bold project. So much exposure." She took a sip. "I've been looking at the debt structure. Very ambitious. You're leveraged to the hilt on the assumption that your primary contractor, Titan Construction, can deliver on time and on budget." Marcus's smile froze. Titan's financing was a closely held secret. "You've done your homework." "I don't do homework, Mr. Thorne. I do due diligence." She turned to Serafina. "You must be so proud. To build something so tall, on such a questionable foundation. It's a terrible risk. One strong wind, and the whole thing could come crashing down." Amina's eyes held his. They were dark, amber, and utterly, chillingly unfamiliar. And yet, something in their depths, a flicker of an old fire he'd extinguished, made the blood drain from his face. "Excuse me," Amina said, her voice dismissive. "I see the curator. It was illuminating. Mr. Thorne, Mrs. Thorne." She and Kareem turned and walked away, leaving a silent, invisible crater in their wake. "My God," Serafina whispered, her knuckles white on her clutch. "What a bitch." But Marcus wasn't listening. He was staring at Amina's retreating back, a cold sweat on his brow. It was impossible. It was absurd. But for the first time in 6 years, he felt a tremor of pure, unadulterated fear. He didn't see a shark. He saw a ghost. The first cut was invisible. 2 weeks after the gala, Marcus Thorne sat in his 90th floor office, soon to be eclipsed by the Astra Tower, and stared at an email. "What do you mean Titan's credit line is frozen?" he barked at his CFO over the speakerphone. "It's not just frozen, Marcus. It's been bought. The entire $500 million tranche purchased in a private transaction by a fund, a Swiss entity called Cetus AG. Never heard of them. They're calling in the 60-day covenants. Titan is defaulting." "Then find another contractor," Marcus snapped. "Titan has the specialized patents for the foundation work. Switching now means a 9-month delay, easy. We'll miss our deadlines. The penalty clauses? Marcus, we'll be hemorrhaging." Marcus slammed his hand on the desk. "Who is Cetus AG? Find out. Now." He hung up and paced his office. This wasn't random. It was a surgical strike. He thought back to the gala. "I've been looking at the debt structure. Titan construction. Amin al-Jamil. It had to be. But why? It made no business sense. It was a targeted, hostile act. Why him? He'd never crossed Al-Jamil Holdings. He spent the next 3 days in a state of controlled panic. He called his bankers, his lawyers, his contacts in Zurich. Cetus AG was a ghost, a shell within a shell, ultimately terminating in a blind trust in Geneva. Untraceable. A week later, the second cut, a story planted in the Wall Street Journal questioning the environmental viability of the Astra Tower. It cited anonymous sources close to the project who claimed the bedrock was unstable. The stock for Van Doren Industries, the parent company, dipped 8%. "It's a lie," he roared at his PR team. "Kill it." "We're trying," his head of PR said, her face pale. "But the journalist has documents, engineering reports. They look like our internal prelims from phase 1. A leak, not just an outside attack, but an inside one." He was being gutted. He went home that night, the mask of the unflappable CEO cracking. Serafina was in the grand salon of their penthouse overlooking Central Park, sipping a white wine. Their son Spencer was asleep. "You look dreadful, Marcus," she said, not looking up from her magazine. "We have a problem," he said, pouring a stiff scotch. "Titan Construction is defaulting. The Astra is stalled." Serafina's head snapped up. "What? How?" "It's Al-Jamil, that woman from the gala. It has to be. She's buying our debt. She's leaking reports. She's trying to ruin us." "I told you," Serafina said, standing up, her voice rising. "I told you she was dangerous. Why is she doing this? Did you offend her? Did you try to sleep with her?" "No, I barely spoke to her," he lied. "This is impersonal. It's a power play." "It doesn't feel impersonal, Marcus," Serafina hissed, her old money composure evaporating to reveal the cutthroat beneath. "My family's money is tied up in that tower, my inheritance. You promised me this would cement our legacy. Now you're telling me some Arab ghost is tearing it down because you couldn't charm her?" "This isn't my fault," he yelled. "Everything is your fault," she retorted. "You're reckless. You over-leveraged us, and now a real player is calling your bluff. You need to fix this. Go to her. Beg. I don't care. But you will not lose my family's money." The power imbalance, the one he had so carefully cultivated with Clara, was inverted. Here he was the one on the leash. Serafina's family owned the board. He was just the CEO, a high-paid, replaceable employee. "I will handle it," he said, his voice cold. He retreated to his study. He had to know. He hired a private investigator, the best in the business, a man named Costello who operated in the deep shadows of corporate espionage. "I want everything on Amina al-Jamil," Marcus told him over a burner phone. "Her history, her weaknesses, her lovers, everything. I don't care what it costs. She's a tough target, Thorne, Costello's gravelly voice replied. Lives in a fortress. No digital footprint before 7 years ago. 7 years ago? Marcus paused. That was just after. Yeah, it's weird, Costello said. It's like she was born in 2018. Before that? Nothing. Zilch. Just a name. Marcus hung up, the chill from the gala returning. Full force. One strong wind, and the whole thing could come crashing down. He remembered that day at Osprey Point. The fog, the roar of the water, the simple, clean push, the perfect crime. He'd built his empire on that act, on that foundation. Questionable foundation. He poured another scotch, his hand shaking. It was impossible. She was dead. He'd seen the obituary. He'd attended the memorial. But as he stared at his reflection in the dark window, he saw for a fleeting, terrifying moment Clara's eyes staring back at him from the void. The invitation was delivered by courier on thick, cream-colored cardstock that smelled faintly of money and power. Mr. Thorne, it seems your Astra project has run into turbulence. Perhaps we can discuss a new flight path. My private dining room, per C, tomorrow. 8 p.m. AI. It was a summons, a predator inviting its wounded prey into the den. Marcus knew it, but as Serafina had made clear, he had no choice. He had to go. The private room at Per Se was encased in glass, overlooking the glittering lights of Columbus Circle. It felt sickeningly like being on a precipice. Amina was already there, seated, nursing a glass of water. She wore a simple blood-red dress. She looked up as he entered, her face impassive. Mr. Thorne, punctual. I admire that. Please, sit. Madame Al-Jamil, he said, his voice a tight chord. He sat. The table was set for two. No pretense, Marcus. May I call you Marcus? She said, not waiting for an answer. You are in trouble. Cetus AG, a charming little fund, isn't it? Now holds the primary debt for your flagship project. The Wall Street Journal piece was just the appetizer. The main course, I assure you, is far less palatable. I have engineering reports that would not just stall your project, but initiate a criminal investigation. What do you want? He asked, his hands clenched into fists on his lap. A buyout? A partnership? Name your price. Amina smiled, a thin, cold expression that didn't reach her eyes. A partnership? With you? No. I don't partner with liabilities. The word, his word, the one he'd used on the cliff. A waiter entered, silent as a ghost, placing a small, exquisite amuse-bouche in front of them. Oysters and pearls. Eat, Marcus. You look stressed. He ignored the food. Why are you doing this? This is a personal vendetta. I've never done anything to you. Haven't you? Amina tilted her head. She watched him like a scientist studying a particularly loathsome insect. You seem to be a man who builds his life on convenient erasures. You see something you want, you take it. You find something in your way, you remove it. His blood ran cold. Costello's report had come back, born 7 years ago. No past. I don't know what you're talking about, he blustered. Don't you? Amina leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Let's talk about Oregon, the coast, all that fog and damp. Marcus stopped breathing. I visit there sometimes, she went on, her voice light, conversational. There's a cliff, Osprey Point. The view is breathtaking, but it's so dangerous. A person could slip or be pushed. A pregnant woman, especially. Her center of gravity, it's all off. It wouldn't take much, would it? Just a gentle push. He stared at her. The face was different. The hair, the voice, the bearing. But the eyes, the amber contacts couldn't hide the soul behind them. The soul he'd tried to extinguish. Clara, he whispered. The name felt like acid on his tongue. Amina's face hardened, the mask of the calm executive cracking to reveal the white-hot rage beneath. You, she hissed. Do not ever say that name. It was her, alive. The impossibility of it crashed into the reality of her sitting across from him. She was alive. She was here. And she held the axe over his head. How? Was all he could manage. You failed, she said simply. You're a sloppy architect, Marcus. You didn't check your foundation. You didn't make sure the job was done. You just walked away and attended a memorial. You grieved for the cameras. Clara, listen to me. I don't know what to say. Good, don't speak. She stood up, walking to the window, looking down at the city. I spent 6 years rebuilding this body. I spent 6 years mourning the son you murdered. My son, Leo. He lived for 7 minutes, Marcus. 7 minutes in agony on a stranger's boat. While you were busy comforting your new, richer girlfriend. She turned back to him. There were no tears in her eyes. There was only fire and ice. So no, I don't want a partnership. Price? She laughed, a short, bitter sound. You don't have anything I want, except perhaps your suffering. What? What are you going to do? He stammered, the alpha predator reduced to trembling prey. I'm going to do what you did to me, she said, her voice dropping to a clinical coldness. I am going to erase you, but I'm not going to be sloppy. I'm going to be methodical. I will take your company. I will take your reputation. I will take your home. I will take Serafina's legacy. And when you are a pathetic, broken man with nothing left, I will send the rest of my evidence to the district attorney. You won't just be poor, Marcus. You will be in a cage. He looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. The naive, trusting girl he'd married was gone. In her place was this queen, this avenging angel forged in the ice and rocks he'd thrown her into. You can't, he pleaded. Think of Serafina. Think of Spencer, my son. He's innocent. Amina's face contorted in a mask of pure, undiluted fury. You dare, she whispered, to speak to me of an innocent son. She walked back to the table, picked up her water glass, and threw the contents in his face. The meeting is over, she said to the shocked waiter who had just entered. Mr. Thorne is unwell. Please see him out. Marcus stumbled out of the restaurant, drenched and broken. The ghost was real. Clara was alive. And she was Amina. He got into his car, his mind racing. He wasn't just fighting for his company. He was fighting for his life. The panic that had been simmering for weeks now exploded. He drove recklessly to their penthouse. He found Serafina in her dressing room, preparing for another charity function. We have to leave, he said, his voice ragged. Pack a bag. We have to go. Now. Switzerland. Anywhere. Serafina turned, one eyebrow raised at his disheveled state. What on earth are you babbling about? I have the museum benefit in an hour, and you're wet. She knows, he yelled, grabbing her arm. Serafina, she knows. Who knows what? Marcus, you're hysterical. Let go of me. Amina Al-Jamil, he breathed, his eyes wild. She's Clara. Serafina froze. The color drained from her face, leaving her pale beneath her expensive makeup. What? That's not possible. She's dead. You promised me she was dead. I was wrong. She didn't die. She's back. She's been planning this. All of it. The debt, the leaks. It's all her. She's going to ruin us. She's going to send us to prison. Serafina stared at him, her mind a cold, fast calculator, processing the new data. Her first reaction wasn't fear, it was rage. You failed, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. You incompetent fool. I built my life with you. I staked my family's reputation on you, on the fact that you were ruthless enough to handle the situation. Me? Marcus was incredulous. You knew? You knew what I was going to do? Of course I knew, she spat. I encouraged it. She was a weak, sentimental little thing, and she was in the way. She and her... it. I was pregnant with Spencer. Our son deserved a clean slate, a legacy, not your messy leftovers. The air crackled with the sheer, unadulterated venom of their shared guilt. This was the true foundation of their marriage. Not love, not even ambition, just a shared, brutal crime. You're a monster, Marcus whispered, seeing her, really seeing her, for the first time. And you're a sloppy one, she retorted. And now you've brought this ghost to my door, to my son's door. What do we do? He pleaded. We? There is no we, Marcus. Serafina's eyes were like ice. You've made this mess. You will clean it up. Or you will take the fall alone. My family will not be dragged down by your incompetence. Serafina, please, we're married. We're in this together. We are a business arrangement, Marcus, and you are about to become a very, very bad investment. I'll kill her, he said, the words sounding desperate, pathetic. For real this time. Don't be an idiot, Serafina scoffed. She's not a pregnant girl on a cliff. She's a fortress. You can't get near her. No, this is over. You are over. She turned back to her mirror, adjusting an earring. I will call my lawyers. We will be issuing a statement, citing creative and personal differences. I will be filing for divorce. The board will be convened in the morning to remove you as CEO. You're cutting me loose? I'm cauterizing the wound, darling. It's just business. He stared at her, the woman he'd killed for, the woman who was now feeding him to the wolves to save herself, the entire grotesque house of cards he'd built. It was all collapsing. What neither of them knew, what neither of them, in their paranoid, narcissistic world, could have imagined, was that Amina's plan had never been just financial. After the gala, her security team had swept the Thorns' penthouse. The sweep had, of course, involved planting several very sophisticated, very small listening devices. In a secure listening post in a nondescript van parked 2 blocks away, Amina Al-Jamil sat, headphones on, listening to the entire horrifying conversation. She heard Serafina's confession. She heard her own callous dismissal. She heard the poison that had fueled her murder. She clicked stop on the digital recorder. She had it. Not just a financial case. Not just an old, cold accusation. She had a fresh confession. Conspiracy to commit murder. She looked at her head of security, a grim ex-Mossad agent. The board meeting is at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Leak the financial crimes portfolio to the board members at 8 a.m. Leak this recording, she tapped the hard drive, to the NYPD Homicide Division and the New York Times at 8:30 a.m. Total saturation. And you, madam? I, Amina said, am going to get some sleep for the first time in 6 years. The next morning, New York City woke up to an explosion. By 8:30 a.m., the New York Times website had crashed. By 9 a.m., every financial news network was running the same grainy, horrifying audio. I encouraged it. She was a weak, sentimental little thing, and she was in the way. By 9:05 a.m., Marcus Thorne was arrested in the lobby of the Van Doren Tower, attempting to flee. He didn't resist. He just looked empty. By 9:30 a.m., Serafina Van Doren Thorne was arrested at her lawyer's office, kicking and screaming, her polished mask finally, irrevocably shattered. Amina watched it all on a massive screen in her office. The circuit board of the city spread out below her. The Van Doren stock was in freefall. The Astra Tower was now a $3 billion concrete skeleton, a monument to ruin. Al-Jamil Holdings, through its various shell companies, was already beginning the process of acquiring the assets, not for pennies on the dollar, but for fractions of a penny. She had won. She had taken everything, his company, his wife, his freedom, his future. It was a total annihilating victory. She waited for the feeling, the triumph, the relief, the peace. It didn't come. Instead, she just felt quiet. The fire that had burned in her for 2,190 days, the one that had fueled her rebirth, her education, her revenge, it was out. All that was left was the ash, and it was heavy. Kareem entered the office, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. It is done, Amina, he said softly. It is done, she repeated, her voice hollow. But it doesn't. He's in a cage. But I still feel. You are still on that cliff, he finished for her. Revenge, my dear, is a ghost. It feeds on you. Now that it is satisfied, it leaves you empty. The true work begins now. She looked up at him, the tears she hadn't shed for 6 years finally welling. The tears for Clara, the tears for her son. "I don't know who I am, Karim," she whispered. "Clara is gone, Amina. Well, Amina was just a weapon. Who is left?" "The survivor," he said, pulling her into a fatherly embrace. "The one who will now decide what to build instead of what to destroy." 6 months later. The fog was thick at Osprey Point, just as it had been. But the woman who stood at the precipice was not Clara, and she was not Amina. She was just herself. She wore jeans, hiking boots, and a simple wool sweater. Her hair was growing out, no longer the severe dark bob, but a softer, more natural brown. She walked to the edge, the wind whipping her face. She felt the old, familiar vertigo, but this time she wasn't afraid. She held a small, smooth gray stone in her hand. She had worked with the state to have a small, discreet memorial bench installed. It didn't bear any names. It just said, "For those lost to the sea." She knelt by the bench and placed her small stone at its base. On it, she had etched a single word. Leo. "Hi, baby," she whispered, her voice thick. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. But it's over now. They can't hurt anyone else. I hope you're safe." She stayed there for a long time, the fog and the sea roaring around her. She was no longer a ghost. She was a woman, scarred, changed, but real. She had liquidated the assets from the Thorn Van Doren buyout. The profits were staggering. She'd used the entire sum to endow a new foundation, the Leo Hayes Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to providing legal and financial aid to victims of domestic abuse, specializing in cases with extreme power imbalances. Her new project wasn't a tower of glass and steel. It was a fortress of lawyers and social workers. It was a new kind of architecture, an architecture of safety. She heard footsteps on the gravel path. It was Karim. "I thought I'd find you here," he said, standing beside her. "It's the first time I've been back," she said, wiping a tear from her cheek. "It's smaller than I remember." "Or perhaps," he said, "you are bigger." She looked at him, and for the first time in so long, she smiled. A real smile. It was watery, it was sad, but it was hers. "What now, my dear Clara?" he asked, using her old name gently. She took a deep breath of the cold, salty air. She was done with erasures. She was done with ghosts. I think I'm just Clara," she said, "and I think I have work to do." She turned away from the cliff, away from the past, and walked with Karim back down the path, towards the future she would build from the ashes. Revenge is a story written in fire, but redemption is written in stone. Clara, now free from the ghost of her past, proved that the deepest betrayals can forge the strongest wills. She didn't just get even, she got better, turning her pain into a shield for others. What did you think of Clara's revenge? Was it justice or something more? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories of complex drama and ultimate redemption, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real-life fiction every week. Don't forget to hit the share button and send this to someone who loves a story where the survivor finally wins. Thanks for watching.